Chapter 02 is about fiscal and taxation dynamics and government behavior. Fiscal systems form the backbone of governance, acting as the framework through which priorities, responsibilities, and resource allocations are structured. In this chapter, the author masterfully delves into the critical relationship between fiscal policy and government behavior in China, using the 1994 tax sharing reform, 分税制改革, as a focal point to illustrate how fiscal decisions shape governance, development, and societal outcomes. This reform, seen as a cornerstone of modern Chinese fiscal policy, not only realigned the central-local revenue dynamic but also paved the way for significant changes in government behavior and economic strategies. The chapter explores these shifts, emphasizing their far-reaching implications for governance and social equity. The narrative begins with a compelling observation: financial decisions are inseparable from governance. Through a vivid portrayal of historical examples, the author captures how even the most powerful figures in Chinese history, whether from the Ming Dynasty or the late Qing era, were preoccupied with balancing budgets and managing expenditures. These anecdotes underscore a timeless truth: governments can only act as far as their fiscal capabilities allow. This foundational insight sets the stage for a deeper examination of China's fiscal transformations. The author's personal experiences studying public finance in the United States provide an illuminating contrast between Western fiscal theories and China's unique governance model. In the U.S., fiscal policies often prioritize efficiency and minimal government intervention, reflecting a market-driven economic philosophy. In contrast, China's fiscal system is intricately linked to its governance structure, where the government assumes a central role in driving economic growth, addressing inequality, and maintaining social stability. These differences underscore the challenges of applying Western fiscal frameworks to China, where fiscal arrangements are not only economic mechanisms but also political tools for managing a vast and diverse nation. At the heart of the chapter is the 1994 tax sharing reform, a pivotal response to the fiscal inefficiencies of the 1980s. During this earlier period, China operated under a fiscal contracting system that granted local governments substantial autonomy over revenue retention. This system was highly effective in incentivizing local economic growth, as local governments were motivated to expand their tax bases. However, it also created significant challenges. As local revenues surged, the central government's fiscal share declined sharply, reducing its capacity to manage national priorities and macroeconomic stability. Simultaneously, local governments increasingly relied on extra budgetary revenues, fees, fines, and charges to circumvent formal revenue-sharing agreements. While this approach allowed local governments to retain more resources, it undermined fiscal transparency and governance. The 1994 reform sought to address these challenges by centralizing revenue collection and redefining fiscal relationships between central and local governments. A new framework was introduced, categorizing taxes into central, local, and shared revenues. Central taxes, such as customs duties, were exclusively allocated to the central government, while local taxes, such as business taxes, were reserved for local administrations. Shared taxes, most notably the value-added tax, VAT, were distributed between the two levels, with the central government retaining the majority share. To enforce this system, dual tax bureaus were established, ensuring local governments could no longer directly control tax collection. A tax rebate mechanism was also implemented to cushion local governments from immediate revenue losses. While the reform achieved its primary objective of stabilizing central revenues, raising the central government's share to over 50%, it also introduced new challenges. Local governments, now receiving a smaller share of revenues, faced significant fiscal constraints. To bridge this gap, they turned to innovative and at times controversial strategies. Chief among these was the rise of land finance. The phenomenon of land finance emerged as a direct consequence of the reform's centralization of revenues. Local governments, constrained by reduced fiscal capacity, leveraged their monopoly over land ownership to generate revenue. By converting agricultural land into urban construction land and auctioning it to developers, they created a substantial new revenue stream. This practice quickly became a cornerstone of local fiscal systems, funding infrastructure projects, urban expansion, and social programs. Land finance played a critical role in China's rapid urbanization and industrialization, enabling cities to grow at an unprecedented pace and attracting significant investment. However, the reliance on land finance brought with it systemic risks and social costs. One of the most visible consequences was a dramatic increase in property prices, driven by restricted residential land supply and speculative bubbles. The resulting housing affordability crisis placed significant pressure on urban residents. Additionally, large-scale land expropriations often displaced rural communities, leading to widespread social unrest and highlighting issues of inadequate compensation. Environmental degradation was another consequence of the relentless push for urban expansion, as ecological considerations were frequently overlooked in the race for development. Beyond these immediate challenges, the reform also exacerbated fiscal imbalances, both vertically and horizontally. Vertically, while the central government retained a majority of revenues, it delegated most expenditure responsibilities to local governments. These included critical areas such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure development. This misalignment left local governments, particularly at the county and township levels, grappling with severe fiscal stress. In many cases, local administrations struggled to fund even basic operations, resulting in wage arrears, inadequate public services, and mounting social tensions. Horizontally, the reform deepened regional disparities. Coastal provinces such as Jiangsu and Guangdong reaped the benefits of industrial growth and export-driven economies, while interior regions like Gansu and Guizhou lagged behind. These disparities were compounded by differences in fiscal capacity, as wealthier regions were better positioned to generate and retain revenues. Central transfer payments aimed to address these inequalities, but the distribution mechanisms often fell short of achieving equitable outcomes. Public service disparities persisted, with poorer regions struggling to provide the same quality of education, healthcare, and infrastructure as their wealthier counterparts. In response to these challenges, the government introduced a series of reforms aimed at strengthening the fiscal system and addressing its imbalances. Transfer payments were enhanced, with funds specifically earmarked for rural development and public services. Administrative reforms, such as province-level management of county finances, sought to improve resource allocation and reduce inefficiencies in local governance. Recent efforts have also focused on curbing over-reliance on land finance and promoting a more equitable fiscal framework. These measures reflect the government's recognition of the need for continuous fiscal adaptation to meet the demands of a rapidly changing economic and social landscape. The chapter concludes with a reflection on the dual-edged legacy of the 1994 reform. While it successfully stabilized central revenues and enhanced macroeconomic management, it also revealed deeper structural challenges in China's fiscal architecture. The rise of land finance, though a pragmatic solution to local fiscal constraints, underscored the limitations of the existing system and the need for further reform. These outcomes highlight the critical role of fiscal policy in shaping governance and economic development, offering valuable insights into the complexities of managing a vast and diverse nation like China. Through its detailed examination of the 1994 reform and its aftermath, the chapter provides a nuanced understanding of the dynamic interplay between fiscal systems and state behavior. It underscores the importance of fiscal policy as both a tool of governance and a reflection of societal priorities, making it an indispensable area of study for those seeking to understand China's political and economic trajectory.